As you're going to see, autoscaling is a super powerful feature for your highly available applications. And really what makes it work is the rules that you configure. So let's take a look at this from a high level, and then we'll get into it in practice coming up in the portal. But let's say you're building a virtual machine scale set, or you're even building a web application in the Azure App Service environment. In both those scenarios, you could build autoscaling rules just like this, and you'll have something called an autoscale profile. And essentially what the profile is just all the settings for what you want the resources to do. So for example, in your autoscale profile, you're going to have capacity settings that determine how many virtual machines you're going to have in those groups of servers. So whether that's a virtual machine scale set or an app service plan. So in terms of capacity settings, we're really talking about minimum and maximum and default number of virtual machine instances. So this will give you the controls on how many virtual machines you can actually scale up to. What's the minimum? So you might have a minimum of one. So make sure I've always got at least one virtual machine. And then based on your costs, maybe you never want more than 4 virtual machine instances. So you could set the maximum to 4, and then maybe have a default of 2. So you've got a high availability model there, but the group knows that you should always have at least 1, and you should never have more than 4. Now, once you've defined the capacity settings for the virtual machine scale set or the app service plan, you're going to have to build your rules. And then along with that, you could set up notifications. So if the system does decide to invoke your rules, you could have a notification sent to your team, sent to you, and let you know that that operation took place. But again, part of the power here is the rules. So within this autoscale profile, the rules are going to give you that very cool, very flexible, very elastic capability that you can enable for your application. So let's dig into that a bit. So when it comes to invoking those rules, you can do this in a couple of different ways. Number one, you can basically key off of metrics, basically performance information, or you can do this based on a schedule. So if you're working with metrics, by default, Azure Monitor has resource metrics for basic stuff like average CPU, the amount of network data or traffic that's flowing in and out of your virtual machines. And so those are basically metrics that are being looked at and recorded and reported on at the hypervisor level where your virtual machines are running. You can also build custom metrics. So there is an agent, a diagnostics extension you can install in your virtual machines, and you could have custom metrics. And essentially that agent can load the data from the inside in the operating system into the Azure platform, and you could key off that information. So for example, if you had a performance monitor counter that you wanted to be able to scale based off of, you could use that as a custom metric. Another common scenario is to scale based off the time of day. So let's say every day of the week during business hours, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m., you want to scale out to 4 instances. And at the end of the day at 5 o'clock, when business hours are over, you could scale in and basically delete a couple of instances and go back down to just 1 instance to power the application when nobody's actually there in the office. But the idea here is that either the metrics or the time schedule is going to invoke your autoscaling rule. And the rule is going to have some actions. So within it, you could pick different things. And we're going to see this when we're building this in the portal. But like we're talking about that horizontal scale to scale out and scale in, you can add or remove virtual machines as part of your actions. You could shoot off an email. And you can also invoke a webhook. So that webhook could be an Azure Automation Runbook. It could be an Azure function. And you could even invoke an application in Azure Logic Apps. So you want to remember this design pattern basically for auto-scaling rules from a high level. We'll see this in action, but this is going to apply to virtual machine scale sets. It'll also apply to app service environments for your web applications that you're running on Azure. And with that, let's move to the next video and we'll finally take a deeper look at virtual machine scale sets.